Absolutely loaded.
Authentic news.
We set the trend.
This is a cue to Reloaded. For authentic news, we set the trend.
Hello, Ugandan. Patricia Namialo, Washington, D.C. And as usual, this is Friday, and it's not just any Friday, it is Red Friday. This is where we discuss topics of national importance. Of course, we have Kyangulanyi Ssentamu NUP, which is a national unity platform, and of course, People Power, the People Power movement, alongside everything that's going on in Uganda and opposition as a whole. And so today we are here with Dr. Daniel Kauma, Agnes, and Edward Abili. And before we get started, I'd like for you to know, as a Uganda living in the diaspora, that you'll never be born in any other country other than Uganda. And what does this mean? You know, this means that Uganda is your homeland. At this particular moment, Uganda needs you. Uganda needs your support. The People Power movement needs funding. And so let us fight alongside our people. Let us fight alongside Ugandans. And so we are going to go and get started by introducing the panel. And Agnes, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you very much. My name is Agnes Katiba. I'm an attorney based in Massachusetts, USA. I do support the People Power team or the NUP team in Massachusetts, but I am the head of the legal team here. And I also do a private practice. I do asylum and people who are persecuted by the NRM regime. I assist them to resettle here. I do all sorts of legal, I deal with all sorts of legal issues. I do love Uganda, and I hope that one day we can all live in Uganda peacefully and don't have to live outside of our country. So I'm looking forward to having this discussion with everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agnes. And we're going to go on ahead and move on to Dr. Daniel Kauma, who happens to also be not far from where I myself live. Dr. Daniel Kauma, please go on.
All right, good evening and good morning, viewers. Again, I appreciate all of you who have been able to tune in today. I'm glad to be on this platform once again to share a few views and ideas as we head into the 2021 elections in Uganda. I'm based here in Washington, D.C. I'm a pharmacist by profession. I'm also an adjunct faculty at Marshall University School of Pharmacy and Lecom School of Pharmacy. I'm also the founder of the Uganda Diaspora Health Network. So I'm happy to be here today, and I'm looking forward to sharing some views, ideas on the way forward with the rest of the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel Kauma. It's always a pleasure having you on this platform. And then, of course, let's move on to my good friend and comrade, Edward Abili from Texas. Edward is also the coordinator in Texas. Edward Abili, please introduce yourself.
Hello, viewers. Thank you for tuning in to this program that is meant to help transform the political process in Uganda. My name is Abili Edward. I am an accountant by profession and also a businessman. I am the People Power coordinator in Texas region. I am also the chairperson of all Ugandans living in Austin. I'm glad to be part of this show. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward Abili. And I understand you just recently got that post. So I'd like to congratulate you, Edward. Well, let's go on to our topics. We are going to discuss the Ugandan committee. So can you please if you're not speaking? So we're going to discuss the Ugandan Electoral Committee. Sometime last week, Kyangulanyi Ssentamu gave an address to the diaspora. And he told us that he was able to go to the Ugandan Electoral Commission and alongside his lawyers and speak to them about the diaspora being able to vote. Not so long ago, they basically, approved the fact that we diasporans can actually vote. However, the Electoral Committee told our future president, Kyangulanyi Ssentamu that we will not be able to vote as the diaspora because they do not have the money. And so I'd like to hear from Agnes. What do you think about that as someone living in the diaspora?
I think that's a very foreseeable result. I wasn't surprised to hear that from the Electoral Commission. The thing is that as Ugandans living in the diaspora, we have to be very careful in trying to assert our right to vote, because it may get misused by the government. So I'm actually pretty contented by the fact that the Electoral Commission, instead of allowing the NRM government to manipulate the diaspora and try to rig elections as they usually do, I'm glad that the Electoral Commission or Electoral Committee was able to assert that they are not going to hold elections in the diaspora. It's very important to see that there is a lot of infrastructure that has to exist for any elections to take place. Although I've heard some discussions about the diaspora paying into, and of course the NRM government has always used the diaspora as a source of revenue. But instead of us paying into and buying democracy and buying our right to vote as Ugandans, I think it's better for us not to participate in this particular election. I'm pleased by the fact that the courts and the parliament were able to have that issued and pass that the people in the diaspora can vote. But I think we, as diaspora people, we should look at this as a victory for the future. When our country is free and when we have set the right infrastructures in place, then we'll be able to participate in our democracy and shape the direction in which our country is going. So I think it's a good thing that the courts were able to pass that. But I think that I support, in this particular case, I support the Electoral Committee in not jumping into an election where we don't have the capacity to set the infrastructure in place, and where jumping into it at this time, a few months to the election, is going to just lead to problems and rigging. Thank you.
So you do raise some very important topics. However, have you looked at that the Electoral Committee is working directly for Dictator Museveni? And so if they're working directly for Dictator Museveni, do you feel that this is a decision they made as though they're looking up for the emperor, or is this a decision they made specifically to look out for the dictator?
I think that they're always looking at how to keep the NRM in power, and I'm not really I'm not speaking to this Electoral Commission in particular because it's a pretty new regime. It's a pretty new team in the commission. But the Electoral Commission is under the NRM because the leaders are all appointed by the regime, and there is no criteria, because Museveni is a dictator. There is no criteria as to how he selects these people. So he selects the people that he can use, of course. But I think in every bad situation, there can be a good coming out of it, and I think I'm looking at it on the side that even if the intentions, even if the motives that they made this decision with was to support the NRM or to keep the NRM in power, we as the diaspora, we as NUP can look at this and see how this could have been worse. It could have been worse in a way that they could have used it to say we have 5,000 Ugandans in Alaska. We have 50,000 Ugandans in Russia. They could have just inflated these numbers and rigged the election even worse. So I think that this is a victory. I think that there is a lot of work and a lot of infrastructures that have to take place for us to be able to participate in our democracy and not to buy into it. And I think that as a country, we will get there with the new government and with the NUP in power. But at this point, I don't think that Uganda is capable of holding an election all over the world, because again, Ugandans are everywhere. We need to have accountability. We need to have lots of things in place to make sure that this election is not a perpetual election, but it's a real election.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Agnes. And I can see you're looking at this from the legal perspective, and of course the organizational level that it would actually take to hold an election, a fair election, I would say, in the diaspora. And so, Edward Abili, what are your views on this topic? Can you unmute?
Thank you so much, Patricia. Regarding the recent standing on as to why people in the diaspora weren't able to vote in the forthcoming election. Just to add on from what Agnes has said, she stated clearly that the Electoral Commission or the government of Uganda has not prepared the necessary infrastructure and established the necessary system to ensure that people in the diaspora can be able to vote. That's very true. Such an election involving people from diaspora voting requires a proper organized system and an infrastructure that will support that. However, this infrastructure is possible. It's also possible to have a good network of returning officers and all the stuff that are necessary to enable Ugandans go vote in the different countries. However, we have seen the NRM regime spend taxpayers' dollars in unnecessary engagements. They have used money to bribe musicians, to bribe people, to turn people against the opposition, to turn people against Bobi Wine. They have used millions of taxpayers' money. That money could have been used to facilitate the forthcoming election. And that clearly shows you that for diasporans to participate in the national election is not an interest of the current regime. In other words, they do not want people in the diaspora to participate in the election. US alone has more than 2 million Ugandans. UK has more than 5 million Ugandans. Ugandans are so many. In other words, people in the diaspora alone can determine the presidency of Uganda. And that's a big threat to the current regime. Reason being that most people in the diaspora tend to live in countries where there's democracy and rule of law. And therefore, they tend to dwell towards ideas that encourage rule of law, that encourage democracy, and that encourage the Bill of Rights. And when you go to Uganda, the current regime has diverted from those ideas and views. So they are afraid that people from the diaspora tend to believe in democracy, and therefore, if they were to vote, they are most likely to vote for a candidate that supports democratic ideas. And so That said, that means that if the diasporans were to participate in an election, they would not vote for the current regime. And that would be a big threat to the regime. So the only thing for the regime to do is to ensure that they do not have the necessary infrastructure. They're going to come up with excuses that the system is so complex to set up, yet the finances are there. We have seen the finances being spent in irrelevant activities. And now they're telling us that they cannot afford to set up the system to enable people in the diaspora to vote. But we know that that's intentionally managed. It is intentionally engineered to ensure that the regime does not lose the forthcoming election. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Edward. And of course, they are scared of the diaspora. We live in countries that are democratic. So now imagine people within the diaspora that have been fighting against dictatorship day and night, going back home, and energy that they're going to take with them, and democratic views that they're going to take with them to share with the communities, alongside the money that will bring alongside us. And so I feel like they definitely were ensuring that we do not go back and vote. And so they approved this, knowing very well that they were not going to let us vote, as a way to just keep us here in the diaspora. But Dr. Daniel Combe, I'm very curious to hear about your views on what you think about this.
I share some of the views of my co-panelists, but if you remember well, Patricia, I did file a petition in 2017
Yes.
to Speaker of Parliament Rebecca Kadaga for a Diaspora Voting Rights Act. So this is not something new for the Electoral Commission to come out now and say, oh, we just learned about it. It's 7 months left to the elections. They have known about this for years, for decades. If you look across the world, 115 countries already allow their diasporas to vote. So even Rwanda, our neighbors, they allow their diaspora to vote. We have 28 African countries to date which allow their diaspora to vote. So this is not something new. NERM has always dragged their feet because they know they don't have support in the diaspora. Just look at what NUP has been able to do just in just a few months. We already have NUP registering large numbers of members in the diaspora. NERM has never been able to do that. Even some of the other opposition parties haven't had the organization capacity which Honorable Kyagulanyi has had to mobilize young people and Ugandans across the diaspora and even in Uganda to register just in a space of a few months. You see party membership registrations happening across the diaspora for the National Unity Platform. So it's very clear that from the beginning, NERM was looking, if you look at the relationship between NERM and the diaspora, it has already been transactional. If you go to the website of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they have what they call the National Diaspora Policy. And if you look at that policy, it has always been transactional. They have always looked at the diaspora as a source of foreign direct investment. Yes, we contribute over 2 billion in remittances per year to Uganda, and the government likes that because when donors cut back money because of corruption and all the embezzlement which we have seen in Uganda, the government has always relied on the diaspora to invest in the Ugandan economy, and the diaspora has done a great job of that. So NERM has always focused on the transactional aspect of Ugandans in the diaspora, but they haven't been able to give us our rights to contribute in holding our leaders accountable, as well as contributing to the democracy in Uganda. Just look at our organization, UNA. If you see how the relationship between Uganda, the government, and some of our organizations here in the diaspora, they are transactional and they are politically motivated. Even in our elections here in the diaspora, NERM comes and takes sides. They don't come and represent us as Ugandans. They come and say, we are going to support this candidate in UNA. Yes. And if you belong to the opposition, they are going to alienate. You saw what happened to me last year and the year before. Yes. Once they know you belong to the opposition, they are going to target you. They are going to fund your opponent. Yes. If you go to the website of the State House today, they say, oh, the current UNA president, Madame Henrietta, defeated the diaspora opposition forces. So you can think about that. That's how NERM views the diaspora. They view the diaspora as people who support NERM and those who don't support the NERM. So that's why Ugandans had to go to court to even demand for the right to vote. We see how NRM sends members of parliament here, they send MPs, they send ministers to come and attend our conventions and events. But all those years they have been spending millions and millions to come to the diaspora and attend our events. They never thought about that we needed to vote, that Ugandans in the diaspora needed to vote, as Article 59 of the Uganda Constitution says. They knew this all along. So from my perspective, the NRM government did not want the diaspora to vote. Yes, with the remaining few months, it's hard to set up the logistics and to make sure we have a free and fair election in the diaspora, especially knowing that, first of all, you have to make sure people have IDs. Even getting an ID in the diaspora right now is a problem. That people who have changed their citizenship, they need to first of all apply for dual citizenship. Right now, that costs $400 to apply for dual citizenship. So for Ugandans to be able to vote, those who have changed their citizenship, they have to first apply for dual citizenship, which is going to cost $400, and that's also a process which takes a long time. Yeah. Then they have to apply for an ID, a national ID. Now, NIRA has been able to come to the diaspora on some of the conventions and be able to register a few Ugandans, but they haven't been able to effectively reach the broad section of the Ugandan diaspora community to make sure everyone gets registered and gets their national ID. So they have known all along that all these steps have to be taken, but they waited until 7 months to the election to say that, oh, we don't have enough time and resources to organize the elections. But now let's talk briefly about the resources. In 2016, the Electoral Commission asked for 419 billion shillings to organize the election. Now in 2021, they came back and asked for 868 billion. That's a 106% jump from the money they spent in 2016. So the Electoral Commission has plenty of money. They got double the budget which was allocated in 2016. If you look at the averages across the globe for organizing elections, an average cost of vote across the world costs $5 US per vote. In Uganda, if you look at the 2011 election, it was $7 per vote. If you look at 2016, it was $8.7 per vote. And 2021 is going to be $12 per vote. So Uganda already is spending recklessly, the way we have known NRM, to organize the election. So this is not a shortage of resources. It's not a shortage of time. They already knew what would be required to organize an election. But like my co-panelist stated, it was a strategic move to make sure the diaspora is shut out of this election. Now they are saying that, oh, you know, in 2026, the diaspora can vote. But I guarantee you, they are going to drag their feet until 2026, and we're going to arrive at the same scenario as we're in right now. So this move, which we saw recently in court, is just to continue delaying the inevitable, that the diaspora deserves the right to vote. So yes, I agree with my panelists that organizing a free and fair election right now is not possible in 7 months. But we also have to be aware that NRM strategically doesn't want the diaspora to vote. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel Kouma. And of course, I was one of the people that was campaigning for you with your position in UNA. And we knew very early on that having a strong voice like that of Dr. Daniel Kouma in UNA was a big threat to the NRM, being that he supported Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert. And of course, as you all pointed out, at this particular moment, yes, they do recognize that the diaspora is a very big threat. And us going back home to Uganda to vote is really a big threat to opposition. But now let's look at solutions. We've already talked about some of the solutions, being with Agnes, you say that we need to structure ourselves. Dr. Daniel Kouma, you said the same thing, and I'm pretty sure Edward Abili, you feel the same. So how do we prepare to vote in the next election? Does anyone have any input on this?
Well, I can contribute briefly to that question. I think if you look at some of the other countries that are allowing their diasporas to vote, there are several ways of doing it. You can either do it in person, which I think is more transparent, where people go to their consulates or embassies and they cast their votes. Because like Agnes mentioned, if you do electronic voting or do proxy voting, you are likely to have rigging, and the government can take advantage of having that loophole to rig the election using the numbers in the diaspora to their advantage. So I think if you look at some of the other countries which are able to do it, voting in person at the embassies will be more transparent, where the polling centers at the respective embassies, where you can wait until your votes are counted, and they announce that Ugandans who voted at the embassy in Washington, D.C., there were 2,000 Ugandans. Honorable Kyagulanyi had this many votes, so that you stay until your votes are counted. And the same can happen at the respective embassies or the designated locations where voting can happen. So that's something which can be implemented. But the challenge, obviously, is making sure people are registered to vote. Because right now, the majority of Ugandans in the diaspora are not registered to vote. So you need the Electoral Commission to make those voter rolls accessible for Ugandans in the diaspora, to make sure they can register to get on those voter rolls. Once they are registered, then you can worry about the logistics of organizing the election. I wouldn't support having an electronic voting system or a proxy voting system like some of the countries do, or an absentee ballot like some of the countries do. I think all of those are very risky. If the diaspora is to vote, I would recommend probably an in-person voting, so that people can stand at the polling station, make sure the votes are counted, make sure there's no rigging that happened, and so that their numbers are announced at the polling location in the diaspora. So I think, in my opinion, that's what would be required to have a smooth and transparent election. But again, like I mentioned earlier, you have to first of all make sure people are able to get their dual citizenship. And charging Ugandans $400, who are Ugandan citizens, to get dual citizenship, I don't think it's reasonable at all. $400, think about a family which has 5 people or 10 people, and you're charging each of them $400 just to get dual citizenship. Yet most of them get their other citizenship out of convenience because of the opportunities that are accessible to them in their respective host nations. So we have to first of all advocate for at least minimizing or getting a discount on that dual citizenship fee, so it's no longer $400. It's a barrier for many Ugandans in the diaspora. And then we have to make sure voter IDs, not just voter ID, but IDs are more accessible to Ugandans. So NERA has to make sure that they set up locations across the diaspora, in North America, in Canada, in UK, in the Middle East, so that Ugandans can get access to IDs. So once you have dual citizenship, you have your IDs, then they can allocate several polling centers where Ugandans know that they need to go to cast their votes. So I think that's the process that needs to be set up, and it has to be happening early. So you don't wait 1 year to the election. Now they're saying 2026. So they should start that process now, so that the steps are, the ball gets rolling, Ugandans get their dual citizenship, they get their IDs, and then they can determine what the polling centers will be.
Agnes, do you have any solutions?
Thank you. Yes. So in addition to what Dr. Kawuma just said, I do agree with I agree partially with what you just said, and I would like to add on this. Some countries are, for example, the United States, where some of us live, actually all of us live on this panel. It's a very big country. Traveling from Massachusetts to DC, or from California to DC, is going to be very costly, time consuming, and there is a lot of things that people have to put in place to make sure that happens. Now, that would be making voting unduly burdensome to some people, and making it accessible, or even not accessible to some populations around the country. And I think Canada is a pretty large country. Russia, China, there are people, the Ugandans living all in several countries, who may not be able to move, to go to their embassies, who would need polling stations in their states. So that would mean 50 polling stations in the US, maybe, or maybe not all states have Ugandans, so maybe 30, and that would go to other countries. And the other thing that you mentioned about embassies, whereas that would be a good thing in a democratic administration. I think the Museveni administration is that handpicks ambassadors and places them and appoints all the people in the embassy. I think that Ugandans would have a problem, or at least I would have a problem with trusting my vote and thinking that the vote that I'm casting is going to be counted fairly and accurately. So I think that we have to have independent bodies. The Electoral Commission itself has to have an independent employees or associates that are setting these things in place and counting the voting votes and doing all those kinds of things, not to leave that to the embassy, who are directly linked to the administration.
Yes, that is very correct. There has to be definitely an independent organization or committee on the side that is handling it, and definitely not the embassy, especially now that a lot of these different departments are working directly for Museveni. Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And we are hoping that Agnes and Dr. Daniel Kauma, that you can write articles and post them on your page about the solutions, so that we can start exploring ideas on what we need to do to ensure that in the next elections, the diaspora is going to be able to vote. And real quickly, Edward Abili, did you want to add anything on this topic in terms of solutions?
I think my co-panelists have elaborated so broadly and effectively on that issue. Mm-hmm. However, what I would say is that to Ugandans out there, that it's possible to have the diasporans vote. It only takes an organized and willing government to do so. And in the polling stations, wherever they will be located, candidates can ensure that they have polling agents, just like Dr. Kauma mentioned. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the votes are counted in front of the polling agents, and then they sign off. And we make sure that whatever that was counted in whichever country is exactly what is reported back at home. Yes. So it is possible. It takes a willing government and an organized government. Yeah. And I hope that the government that will be in place by 2026 will be able to have that capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. These have been very good suggestions and ideas. And so we are going to move on to our next topic, which is tribalism. And the question is there tribalism in Uganda? And if so, is this one of the reasons why the dictator is still in power? Agnes, please lead us on this topic.
Thank you very much. So yes, there is tribalism in Uganda. I'm sure that's not news to anyone sitting on this panel or anyone in Uganda. When you trace tribalism has existed in Uganda. Even it precedes this administration, the NRM administration. Tribalism has always been a method of leadership. When you look at colonial times, where the British government around the world, but in Uganda specifically as well, used the divide and rule kind of leadership, where they divided Baganda and made them give them some sort of power, and use them to govern the other tribes. When you look at Rwanda, the same thing happened. They used one tribe to give them, the minority tribe, to give them a lot of power or some power, and use that tribe to oppress and govern the other tribes. So this is a sort of thing that predates our own independence and our own governance, and it's going to take a lot of work. Now, when the previous governments came into power, if you look at Ugandan history, there has been a lot of tribal battles going on, with one president from one tribe taking over and overthrowing another, and things like that have been going on. When Museveni came to power, when he fought the war, he promised Ugandans a difference. but he also had to buy into the tribal propaganda, which he used tribes against one another. When he came, as long as I can remember, when I lived in Uganda, we never, as Ugandans, we almost never counted the North as part of Uganda, because it was some very abstract area in the country with Kony, and that's all we knew about that region. And so that is the propaganda, that is the kind of idea that he sold to the country, that is a very abstract, the abstract picture that he sold to the country. And then when you look at the different appointments in the government, they have been predominantly occupied, and I'm not going to be shy to say this because it's the truth, predominantly occupied by the tribes in the West, in Western Uganda, where the current president is from. He has used this method of getting one person from a certain region to get a Muganda and give him one post as the vice president, a very unqualified and very unqualified candidate, and put him there as a perpetual person to tell the Baganda that we have given you something. And then he gets a person from the North and puts him in charge of something else. Now, that is the method he's been using, that he is selling Ugandans feathers while he takes the chicken. He's giving us a shiny stone while he takes the gold. And so getting one Uganda and putting him in a certain position, a very disqualified candidate actually, putting in a certain post as a perpetual way of telling Baganda that I've given you something, or getting one Musoga and giving her one post while the rest of the Basogas are suffering, the rest of the Bagandas are suffering, the rest of the northern tribes are suffering, the eastern tribes are suffering. Doing that is the same method that the colonialists used, and so Museveni is working not for Ugandans but for his government. The governance has been shaped by the colonial tendencies, and you can trace that a lot into that. What I can say about the entire governance is that he uses people against each other. He divides the different tribes against each other, and then we battle each other as he takes everything that Ugandans own. And we stop focusing on the fact that we are Ugandans, and then pick on each other in the different tribes. And so we need a government that is going to unite all Ugandans and rule all Ugandans and rule and lead for all Ugandans. And so I don't support the whole view of getting one person from each region. I think that we should have a representative governance where we look at how many people live in this region, and the same that we use here. Massachusetts gets as many seats in Congress as the people in Massachusetts, and so that's a method I think we should use for Eastern Uganda and I don't think it's necessarily tribe other than population. But there are so many Westerners or Easterners living in Buganda or in Central Uganda, so Central Uganda should get representatives into parliament based on the population in that region, and that same should go around. And that's how we are going to get regions all over the country to develop, because they're going to have people who actually represent them. It is just absurd that, for example, we had the First Lady, the current First Lady, as the MP of Karamoja. She doesn't even speak the language.
Yes.
So how is she representing the does not even speak the same language they do? She doesn't live there. She's not qualified to be there. But it's that kind of leadership where they have to create posts for everybody in some trades and accommodate them, no matter how unqualified they are. It's a despicable thing to do, and we definitely have a lot of work to do and a lot of cleaning to do.
Thank you very much. One thing I noticed is that you talked about the North with the LRA, which is the Lord's Resistance Army, which was Kony. there was a war going on in Rua, if I'm correct, and it seemed like the rest of the country was not really too worried about it. And that's a problem because it just really goes to show that there is tribalism in Uganda. And as Ugandans are moving into a new Uganda, we need to recognize that we are Ugandans above all else, the tribes, the religions, and the political parties. There is definitely an urgent need for unity in Uganda right now. And Edward Abili, tribalism, what is the way forward?
Thank you, Patricia. First of all, before I come up with the way forward, I need to also just add on what Comrade Agnes just stated. It is true that tribalism is a very major disease with the Museveni's government. If you look at the current Electoral Commission, look at all the returning officers of the Electoral Commission. They are all from one region. And as though Uganda belongs to a certain group of people while the others pay taxes for the rest. And that is how Museveni plays his politics. If you go to the military, look at the names, the Muhoozi, Kainerugaba, the CDF is also Muhoozi. You look at Chianda, all the same people. They are all, it's just Westerners. And then when they promote some people from different tribes, those people are just put there as statues. They don't actually hold any significant office. And even if they have any office, those offices, they do not have even power to make any decision. So that's how Museveni plays this game of tribalism. Now, this message goes to my brothers and sisters from the West. These are very wonderful people. They are people that really love Uganda. However, they need to wake up and start cautioning Museveni because Uganda is now developing hatred, all tribes against one tribe, and which is not a good thing for our country. We need to believe that we are one people, and we need to believe that Uganda is one country. And by so doing, we need some kind of reconciliation. We need a government that will reconcile the people, a government that will recognize all tribes, that will recognize the West, that will recognize the North, the Central, and the East. Because when we are united, we are strong. Remember that Uganda is a very small country. Uganda is only 45 million. And 45 million people, as few as they are, they still have a president that makes them believe that they are different, and therefore they are fighting against each other, fighting for resources. In so doing, Uganda is being affected as a country. Yes. I'll give you an example of a country like Tanzania. Tanzania is about 55 million right now. Tanzania is the same size, almost the same size as Texas. Tanzania is a very big country. Tanzania has more than 100 tribes. Uganda has about only 50 tribes, okay? But Tanzanians do not practice tribalism. They all believe that they are all one. And because of that belief of unity and non-existence of tribalism, Tanzania has developed far more than Uganda. In fact, you cannot compare the economy of Tanzania to Uganda today. You know, Tanzania has more than 10 international airports. Okay, something that Uganda has the capacity to do. But because we are still divided into our small tribal segments, so we are not able to think big as a country. So therefore, my urge is that let's support Bobby Wine, who has a solution to this disease. Let's kick out Museveni with this old mentality that lies to Ugandans that they're different, and yet we know that we are one people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Daniel Palmer.
Yes, I agree with my co-panelists that definitely tribalism is a problem in Uganda. I know Museveni likes denying it, but he denies everything, even corruption. He says it doesn't exist in his government. But obviously, there are several solutions, and I wanted to look at the solutions. We can look at the NRM approach. They said they outlawed it. They practice it, but they outlawed it. So in 1989, I believe they tried to pass a law through the penal code to make it unlawful to even talk about tribalism. That's why they lock up people who try to discuss the problem. We have seen a couple comedians locked up. We have seen journalists threatened because they are discussing tribalism. But that's not how you fix tribalism. And now we have the Jinja municipality legislator Paul Mwiru, who came up with an idea that he wants to table a constitutional amendment. He calls it the anti-sectarian amendment, and the idea is to ensure equal distribution of public sector positions in Uganda. Now, you could look at it as an affirmative action approach, like we have here in the United States, where we say we have tribalism, we have racism, and black people are not getting positions of power. Therefore, we need some kind of affirmative action, whether it's school admissions and that kind of thing. So that's another approach. And that's open to debate whether it's a good idea. I personally don't think it's a good idea. I feel the best way to move Uganda forward, especially if we want to compete, like my comrade talked about in the economy, if you look at countries that have been successful like Singapore, meritocracy is very important. I'd rather have someone get a position because they're qualified to do it. If everyone who is working in area government is qualified, I won't complain which tribe they belong to. If they are hiring people to work in a certain sector and they advertise the position and they interview candidates and they hire the most qualified candidate, I don't think any of us would complain if those candidates come from a particular tribe. If it's a fair playing ground, yes, everyone has access to those positions. Everyone is able to apply and compete for those positions. I don't think you're going to get complaints from anybody. And I think that's what NRM needs to understand. People are not going to complain about tribalism if you're giving equal opportunity for every Ugandan to compete for these positions. But what's happening right now is that there's no equal opportunity. It's loyalty over competence. People are getting positions of power because they are loyal to NRM, because they are loyal to Museveni, or they belong to his family, not because they're qualified for those positions. And I think that's what's causing many Ugandans to get unsettled about it. And historically in Uganda, that's what has caused tensions. If you look at Idi Amin, if you look at Obote, if you look at all the previous regimes, there's a certain tribe which was favored during those regimes. And when they get out of power, there's a tendency for other tribes to revenge towards the regime which was favored by the previous one. So that's what we don't want to happen in Uganda. We want a Uganda which is peaceful, but the best way to get there is make sure there's positions are won in terms of merit, that there's equal representation, equal opportunity, rather than resulting into loyalty or making it illegal to talk about tribalism, or even legislating saying we're going to make it constitutional that to hire someone to work in the Ministry of Finance, there should be 2 Baganda or 3 Basoga. I don't think that's the right approach. We should always lean towards getting the most qualified people to compete in government. The third and final solution, I think, which can help us solve this problem, is restoring presidential term limits. And having term limits, that's a very big factor. It's inevitable. Most leaders will always pick people who are loyal to them to serve with them. It's something which, however much you tell someone how it's important to get the most qualified people, even in the United States here, we see it. When Bill Clinton was president, he will hire people who are loyal towards him, at least to work in the White House. When Barack Obama was president, he had his team. When Trump is president, he also has people who are loyal to him. So, but the way the United States solve this problem, you are guaranteed that every 8 years, that group is going to be gone. But the problem we have in Uganda is when term limits were removed, you can have someone rule for 34 years with the same group of people. So that creates tension across the country because other groups are saying, what's going on here? We have only Westerners in government. It's been 34 years and they want to extend it to 40 years. So how do you have that rotation? And I believe presidential term limits are a check in the system, because sometimes you have to protect leaders from themselves.
Yes.
Leaders are always going to pick people who are loyal to them. I love Bobby Wine, but if Bobby Wine wins, it's likely that he will likely also have people who are loyal to him. But at least he's committing to restoring presidential term limits. Because I know when he restores that, even if Bobby Wine comes and says he's going to hire people who are loyal to him, I know after 8 years or 10 years, he's going to be gone. And we'll have another president who will also bring in another group of leaders. So I believe that rotation of power is what can settle countries which are diverse as ours, where you have people from so many different tribes. It's hard to satisfy everybody. You have 50 tribes. How are you going to satisfy every tribe and say we're going to have a diverse? But if you focus on merit, people are going to be satisfied because they say, you know what? I have a chance to compete. They're not going to favor only Westerners, but I have a chance to win that position. And once you have presidential term limits, people know that, yes, he might hire Westerners, but we know that, hey, the next president might belong to another, might come from the North. And then we can have rotation of people in different positions of power. So for me, I think those are the critical solutions to overcome the issue of tribalism. Make sure we promote meritocracy, make sure we have rotation of power through presidential term limits. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel Kauma. So Kathy Tendo, one of the viewers, just commented and said that Rutamanguzi basically said that the current genocide that is taking place at Kitalia prison. And not long ago, I'll probably say 3 months back, I read on Nathan Span's page that young youth around central Uganda were being picked up and arrested in the middle of the night. And he was basically telling parents and the youth to be careful, and should someone come pick them up in the middle of the night for no good reason while they're out and about, that they needed to resist arrest. Can we briefly talk about this topic? Agnes, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you. So this is a very painful thing. It's even hard to actually address it. It's absurd that people are not free in their own country, and it's not shocking. The NRM government is on its way out, so it's trying its best. It's like a dying horse kicking. The NRM government is trying its best to resist. It's the resistance movement anyway. So it's resisting change that's coming. It's resisting the voices of Ugandans. It's resisting everything that Ugandans are asking for. They're asking for change. They're asking for opportunities in their own country. They're asking for employment. They're asking for the freedom to be able to express themselves. And the NRM government is resisting a lot, resisting that. And it's just absurd. If you listen to the description of what is going on in the prison, where the people are grouped in hundreds into a cell, and they are arrested for being unruly or going about after quarantine, or basically they are a threat to the spread of the coronavirus, and they're put in this cell with no sanitary equipment, with no masks, and with no sort of precaution whatsoever. And they are so those are pretextual arrests, where people are arrested for something that doesn't even make sense. In this case, people are getting targeted for belonging to certain regions or certain tribes, or in this case, it's the central. The people in the central, it's a mixture of all people from all over the country, because the central has the capital. People gather in the city, and it's hard to even single out one tribe. It's the Ugandans in central Uganda being targeted because they have access to more information. They do have access to whatever we are talking about right now, to NUP and our ideologies, because they're in the central. He has kept the people in the villages very in a naive kind of status, that he has kept them from seeing, watching the news or learning what their rights are, or hearing what they're supposed to hearing even about the candidates. Right now, he kept our candidates from going into the villages to navigate the system so that people don't learn about it. Now, the people in the city in central Uganda know about what's going on, and they're talking about it, and they're advocating, and they're planning to vote. We saw what happened in the youth election. So these are people that are threats to him, and so he is killing them. This is a genocide. He is taking he's taking young boys from their mothers and killing them. This is a genocide. This is something that is so serious that it shouldn't be addressed tomorrow. This is something that is supposed to be addressed today. And it's so urgent that I think every Ugandan from wherever they are should be involved and should be discussing this, because this is something that that is just it's despicable that Museveni is doing this, and the fact that he's covering it up. And this is not new for Museveni. This is something that has just come out in the light because he's exposing himself. He has done that in the past. He has put people in safe houses and killed many of them, and not, some of them we've never even learned of. People disappear off of the streets of Uganda and disappear, and no one sees them again. And that has been going on for all these years. But Museveni is on his way out right now, so he's panicking. So now they arrested Lutamaguzi and had to take him to Kalanga, I think. And because they're panicking, they didn't prepare. They didn't put the right arrangements in place. So now they're exposing themselves by dropping him off in different locations where they're killing people. So he's able to see what's going on.
Yes.
Before, they used to be very instrumental in what they're doing, that they used to be able to cover this up. Now he's panicking, so he's exposing all his acts. And Ugandans are able to see this. And I call upon Ugandans everywhere, everywhere in the world to engage and to save our people. These are people that are dying. These are 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds who are disappearing from the streets and getting killed. This is not something that that should be taken lightly. And I call upon every single person to be part of this. The arrangements I'm working on with other lawyers to take these matters into court.
Thank you very much. I did watch the Lutamaguzi video. We all did, and it is in Luganda, so it is very important that he's able to shoot another video in English, so that we can move it through social media and we can get it to our Human Rights Watch and to the UN as well as a proof that yes, there is something really wrong that is happening in Uganda today. And so, comrades, we have so much to discuss. However, we're running out of time. And I think at this particular moment,
can I briefly comment on that?
Absolutely, Dr. Daniel.
Yeah, I wanted to briefly comment on that issue of human rights violations, because that touches my heart personally. There's mass genocide going on in Uganda, and the fact that the system is failing our young people. Parliament has failed our young people. Here is a member of parliament who was taken to a safe house, and he says he was locked up with thousands of young Ugandans who are being held in captivity without being brought to court. Think about it. This is a member of parliament. So you have a speaker of parliament doing nothing. These are legislators who have the right and capacity to hold the executive accountable for what they are doing. They have oversight responsibility over the government of Uganda. And that's why Ugandans have to vote. Now, you saw the NRM primaries. I know most of you were celebrating when many incumbents lost, and rightly so, because those people go and sit in parliament. They don't do their work. They sit aside because they get their paycheck. Ugandans are being tortured. Ugandans are dying. Money is being embezzled and they're doing nothing. So these people have to be voted out. So I encourage opposition members. Yes, we are happy many NRM incumbents lost, but even the NRM ticket has to be defeated, because we need to elect people in parliament who are actually going to make sure parliament conducts their oversight responsibility. It has to be, the line has to be drawn that our young Ugandans cannot be failed. We have people in jail dying in large numbers. We have a member of parliament who was a witness to what's happening, and everyone is quiet. Parliament is quiet, the judiciary is quiet. The judiciary should be the organ responsible in preserving law and order, but the courts are quiet. We have young people in jail for no reason, because they support the opposition, because they were wearing a red beret or wearing a red shirt, or they were participating in youth elections. The only people who are being bailed out are the people who are popular. If you're a member of parliament, or if you're a guild president or Makerere, and we post your picture on social media and government feels guilty, those are the young men who are able to come out of those jails. But the rest of Ugandans who are unknown or average Ugandans are behind bars. Many are dying for no reason. So as the diaspora, we have to take on this responsibility to make sure we expose what's happening in Uganda, to make sure there's justice. We have to contact the global bodies like Amnesty International, among others, the State Department here in the United States, to make sure they know and they're aware about the crimes against humanity happening in Uganda today behind closed doors. So that's our responsibility as a diaspora. We have to be involved. But even voters, don't accept NRM to bribe you for 1,000 shillings or 2,000 shillings to buy your vote. Make sure you hold your leaders, your representative accountable, to make sure when they go to parliament, they represent you, they fight for you, and they're able to hold the government accountable. But as Ugandans in the diaspora, we cannot allow these human rights violations to continue. I know I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I think this is an important point to emphasize that as a diaspora, that's one of our responsibility. Let's make sure we support the right candidates to make sure they are elected. We also have to make sure we shine a light on the atrocities that are happening in Uganda today to avoid the genocide the NRM government is conducting on the Ugandan people. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Daniel Koma talked about the atrocities that are happening in Uganda today. It is very important for those that are actually being arrested to make sure you're keeping a record of what's taking place, the police report. We need that as proof. You know, if you have any wounds from being beaten or from torture, take a picture of that while they're still fresh. And you can send that information to any coordinator within the United States, or you can send it to Karim Tambi. He's the coordinator here in Washington, D.C., who handles issues that deals with human rights violations in Uganda. Or you can also send it to Haman Ainebiona, who is the diaspora coordinator here for the whole of the diaspora. And of course, you can take that information to the Secretariat. We need to as much information as we can get, but it needs to be very organized with actual proof. So we have all these people that are able to tell us this and this happened to me, but there's no actual proof that goes with it. These people are asking us for the police report. They want to see pictures. They want to see you on camera talking about what happened to you. If we want change in Uganda, we're going to get a little bit, we're going to have to get organized. And Edward, did you have anything to add to this topic of young men that are, you know, in Kitalia prison?
Yes, it is very absurd that the government of Uganda has resorted to desperate measures.
Mm-hmm.
There's a saying that states that when you see a dog running from one direction towards fire, then you know that whatever that is chasing that dog is hotter than fire.
Yes.
And so in this situation, the NRM regime under Museveni's leadership has lost legitimacy, has lost the support, has lost the popularity of the Ugandans. And so they know that power is slipping out of their hands, and they know that it's only a question of time and there will be no more. And so they have resorted to desperate means, and they think that by killing people that support Bobi Wine, that wear red berets, that put on red, and all those that support any opposition, especially from the central, they think that that will scare off people and probably will drum up their support. But unfortunately, they are taking a wrong path because it is out of desperation. And therefore, Ugandans need to stand up, expose this kind of cruelty. We need to expose Museveni to the world, and we need to say no to unlawful detention. We need to say no to killing of innocent Ugandans, and we have to hold these organs accountable. We need to hold the police accountable. We need to hold CMI accountable. We need to hold ISO accountable. We need to expose who are their leaders, who are these people that are carrying out these executions on behalf of Museveni. We need to expose these people because we need a free and fair election, and we need a transparent government. We need a stable Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward Abili, and thank you very much, panelists. And I'm hoping that next time we are able to touch on grassroots mobilization. So it seems like opposition is very scared of what's taking place in central Uganda. There's so much energy around NUP and change and Bobi Wine in general. And of course, there's many parts of the country that are pushing for change. However, this is where grassroots mobilization comes in, where we are able to get deep down into the villages and other parts of the country and mobilize to take down dictator Museveni. For those that would like to donate to the People Power movement, please visit www.peoplepower.org.ug, and you can also donate in the name Daniel Oyowat, and the phone number is 011-256-703-6363. And I'm going to finish off by telling you the different events that are going to be taking place within the diaspora this month and the following month. And you can also find these events on Bobi Wine's page. You can also find them on Herman Ainebiona's page. And of course, I also make sure I'm posting these events as I get them. So, of course, we have Red Friday, which is today. Washington, D.C. has their prayers. Every Monday, 7 p.m., praying for peace in Uganda and peaceful elections. San Francisco is going to have a NUP registration event on September 19th, 2020 at 4 p.m. Los Angeles, October 10th, 2020 at 4 p.m. And then Washington, D.C., my state, and Dr. Daniel Cohen state, will be having our event on September 26th this year, of course, at 1 p.m. And then we have Amsterdam on September 10th, 2020. And then Pacific Northwest, Seattle, and that is going to be September 12th, 2020 at 6 p.m. So thank you very much for watching Red Friday. I thank you for joining us today for Red Friday, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's your tone.
Reloaded.
Authentic news.
We set the trend.
This is a Q2 Reloaded. For authentic news, we set the trend.